Hey guys, this is John, and it is Sunday, January 4th, and I'm on the ICC playing 5-minute. Let's go knight c3 against this. We'll play into a Nimzo. I'll play my usual queen c2 line. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Mine was good. It's very cold here in Minnesota, but I'm staying indoors, staying warm. So this guy is a FM from Peru. This is a trendy line. Black usually plays b6 now. I've actually never faced this line OTB. I might have faced it once or twice online. I think I'm going to play bishop g5. Then when they go bishop a6, I will play queen c2. So that's usually what they do, bishop a6. And usually black tries to arrange an early c5 in this variation, if I recall. I know I could have played bishop f4 on the previous move, move 9, and then if bishop a6, attempt to grab the pawn on c7, but black obtains pretty good counterplay, as I recall. Wish I knew the move here. I mean, knight bd7 certainly looks sensible for him. He opts for this instead, also makes sense. So now I'm thinking of either rook d1 or just taking on c5. I'm just going to take for simplicity's sake. He instantly took back. So if I take this pawn, I expect he'll get good compensation. Probably with knight bd7 and moves like rook b8, maybe queen a5 check if he gets a chance. So I am not going to take the pawn. I'm just going to play... I'm just going to play rook d1 and attack his queen.
Check.
He gives a check. Maybe, I could play bishop d2, but he goes to b6. Not sure how much that favors me. Queen d2 is probably playing for a slightly better endgame. Let's go queen d2. You guys know I like to play endgames, and this looks like a way to simplify the position and maybe retain the bishop pair in the process.
Check.
So I'll take with the knight now. Let's do that. Keep his knight out of e4. Maybe keep some tension on the f6 knight so I can insert a capture if I want. I am a little worried about my b2 pawn, though. I probably should have thought about that more. Let's just play e3 and attack his bishop on a6. I'm expecting him to take. I'll take with my rook. Should he play rook b8, I'll play knight c4 to defend. And I hope that my knight is not easily disturbed on the c4 square. I have some micro advantages here, and if you guys are watching this and want to try to enumerate a couple of those advantages, feel free. In my mind, my advantages are the pawn structure, for one thing. He has two isolated pawns, the A and the C pawns, and he has just one more island than me, one pawn island. So he has 1, 2, and 3. This cluster from e6 to h6 is a pawn island. And I have just 2 pawn islands, a3, b2, and then this cluster over here. So that's in my favor. Also, we're in a like a queenless middle game, getting close to an endgame, and my king is in the center. That should be helpful if more pieces get exchanged. I like the fact that my king will be more accessible to the middle of the board. Maybe my minor pieces are a little bit better than his. I feel like my bishop and knight combo have more potential than his 2 knights combo. That's an interesting move. So he prepares doubling up, and also he hinders any advance with my b pawn. I want to go king e2, but I'm a little worried about knight b6. I should probably play rook d2, to be honest. Yeah, let's go rook d2. He can't go knight e4 because his knight on d7 would hang. So I'd expect him to double up here, or maybe play knight b6. But on knight b6, I might play knight a5, is what I'm thinking. Because playing my rook to d2 does free this knight. It no longer has to defend the pawn on b2. He does play knight b6. If I take, he gets to take back with the pawn, and he doesn't have any problems after that. So I think I pretty much have to do this if I want some chance for an edge. Now, let's get the knight into c6. I think that's an annoying piece for him. Although he can play knight c4. Forgot about knight c4. I am counterattacking his a pawn, though. Plays knight a4 instead. Okay. Maybe b4 now? Maybe I take first. Let's take first. I don't think I can really do much with my bishop on h4 anymore. I think it's liable to be locked out of the game, actually. So let's do this and then... If I take a7, he takes b2. I don't think I'm any better there. Let's go b4. He can't play rook c8 because I would play knight e7. So I have that going for me. And let's take back with the pawn. I need a couple moves to get organized. I need to be able to play like king e2 and then bring my rook to c1. And in the meantime, though, he can, do something like that, rook b6. I was thinking rook c2 might be okay against that move. Seeing as how he still can't play rook c8 because I have knight e7. So I'm thinking he moves the king, I move my king. Let's say king d2. Yeah, and now I can bring this rook over. Maybe I'll play rook a1 too. Rook a1 might be a threat. Okay. I could take on a7, but that's just a trade. Let's go here. Let's keep the tension. I'm down about 30 seconds on the clock, so I'd like to get that back. Let's just start gaining some space on this wing. I don't see like an obvious way to improve our position, so I just want to gain some space. His knight is slightly precarious on this square. Let's go g3 now. So this pawn is a potential target in the future. Now we're both going into a mode of trying to gain space. He can play knight b2 against this move, but I just wanted to see what he does. If he doesn't play knight b2, I might play this rook to c2. Yeah, let's do that. He can still play knight b2, though, is the funny thing, after this move. To make progress, I'm going to have to move my knight sooner or later. It's going to have to be done. What about f4? Maybe I can plant this knight on e5. This is an unusual type of move. In fact, I don't think it's even very good. But let's see how he plays it. I'm going to go here. I expect him to repeat. Yeah, he's going to want to repeat. Let's take. It's very equal. He can just play rook c4 if he wants. I'll go back. I'll put my king on d3. It's extremely equal. I'm a little worried he might play rook c1, though, and go after my kingside pawns. This could be a potentially foolish way of trying to play for a win. I probably shouldn't push my luck in this position, to be honest. With the time situation. Let's see if he pushes his luck. Let's just do this. Let's get rid of these pawns.
Check.
This is a draw. I can try to offer him a draw and see if he'll take it.
Check.
Draw.
It is pretty much a draw, but he might play for the win.
Check.
We shall see. Okay, now he has maybe some slight problems. Just
Check.
slight.
Draw.
Okay, let's just agree to draw. Yeah, I think in that endgame with 2 rooks and knight for each side, I had like the tiniest of edges just because his coordination was slightly worse than mine, but it wasn't anything tangible. And I didn't see a way to clearly improve my position. So let's have a look.
Check.
D5 is like a brute force equalizing try in this position. The traditional way that people play this position is b6, and then bishop b7, pawn d6, knight bd7, pawn c5, that sort of thing, so keeping a more closed center until they eventually break with c5. But as I was saying, in this position, usually white decides between bishop f4 and bishop g5. And bishop f4, it's the more direct move because it does attack c7. But as far as this position, I think black has fairly good compensation. I wish I knew more details than that, but I think the development lead, even though it's an endgame, does count for something here. So I played bishop g5 instead. He went bishop a6, I went here, c5. We traded. So if I take this pawn on c5, I would expect something like knight bd7. And I think his rook is going to be nicely posted on either b8 or c8 in the next few moves. And he's almost entirely mobilized, whereas I need probably at least 3 tempos to safeguard my position. A pawn move, like e or g pawn to get the bishop out, actually getting the bishop out, and then castling. And that's not even counting the potential problem where if I play my e-pawn up and he trades, I won't be able to castle short anymore. And I'm certainly not going to castle long in this position, barring some extreme circumstance. So I'd prefer to just develop and attempt to catch up on development in this position. Maybe rook d1 is not the best move. I'm trying to remember if... I kind of vaguely recall some games where maybe e4 or e3 was played in this position, and then after the bishops were traded, white taking with the king and trying to go g3 and king g2. But I'm not too sure. And actually, there's something to be said for putting the pawn on e3 rather than e4, because I'm worried in some positions he might go knight c6 to d4, and I think it's nice to have the pawn here to discourage that plan. So I played rook d1, check. He gave a check. Bishop d2 is possible here, but I headed check for the endgame. Knight takes. And we traded. I think he played this well. I didn't really get too much. In retrospect, maybe I should take on f6 immediately, considering that after I played bishop h4, I eventually went bishop takes f6 anyways. So maybe if I trade right now and then play knight c4, it's a slightly improved version of the game. But realistically, I think if he gets in a position to be able to trade these knights off, aka if he can get his knight to b6 especially, that should equalize the position entirely, because the b2 pawn is the only weakness he can truly attack here, especially in a timely manner. Like, my pieces are a ways away from that. So if he can shake my knight, and it's a good knight too on a nice square on c4, if he can do that, there's no reason to believe black would be significantly worse. But around here, after bishop h4, I was encouraging you guys to try to figure out why white might be slightly for choice in this position. I'm going to add the engine and just see like what the eval is. I'm going to guess that the engine gives white like maybe a 2/10 of a pawn advantage. I'd say with a high degree of certainty, it's somewhere in the range of like plus 0.1 to plus 0.3, something like that. But I wouldn't be shocked if it was like around 0 as well. Okay, it actually likes my position more than I thought. It's taking a little time to adjust. But yeah, it's a moderate advantage. Like I don't know if I'd look at this position and say white's better by half a pawn, but those advantages, the pawn structure, the knight plus bishop combo versus the 2 knights, the centralized king, maybe it is getting somewhere in that range. It's an annoying advantage. There's some static, some nice static edges I can claim here, like the pawn structure and the king being in the center. This seemed like a good idea, though, putting the rook on b3. Wonder if I had anything here. I think I ended up playing rook d2. Okay, computer says king d2. That might not have been a bad idea. It's an unusual move, but the idea is to park the king on c2. So I can probably meet knight b6 with king c2. And he doesn't have time to trade knights now because I take. So then if rook b5 is in the game, I can run away with this knight, and I don't have to constantly worry about the defense of the b2 pawn. Okay, so it takes kind of an imaginative move here, king d2, to secure an edge for white. Yeah, I could see that. I can get my king there, and it's almost like having an extra piece in the fray because his king is such a long ways from participating. I would bet at the rook d2. I don't have too much. This is kind of a lackluster move. Yeah, the eval drops to essentially equal at this point. Knight a5. Didn't like that either. Says I should just settle for trading. I thought trading he would just take with a pawn, though. I'm kind of surprised the engine suggests rook takes. Or, the engine suggests rook takes, but I thought pawn takes would be simpler. So this doesn't look like much. Maybe his rook is slightly misplaced still, but I don't think that's anything of huge concern to black. But yeah, I can't overstate the importance of this knight to b6 maneuver for him. It's absolutely key that he gets this in. Otherwise, if he just sits on this position, let's say he just plays like that, some generic move, and then this, and then maybe tries to get his king to the center. See how fast that edge goes up for white? It's because I've managed to consolidate. I can get my rook into the game. If he's not going to shake this knight, it's not really clear what he's playing against. So the engine was just showing some straightforward plan of like doubling up the rooks, and it's harder for him now. Now this move is not going to have the same effect as it did earlier. I get to keep more pieces on the board. So good timing by him to get knight b6 in. I got this here. Yeah, I thought he should have gone knight c4 in this position. I think I mentioned in the game. He played knight a4. I'm guessing he just didn't see knight c4. Otherwise, if he wants to go attack the pawn, I'm sure he'd love to have done it with tempo on my rook too. Yeah, according to the computer, I'm slightly worse at this point. Rook b6. Okay, yeah, that would have been a good move. Because then if this knight takes, he takes on b4, he'll win his pawn back, and or maybe not. Maybe he can attempt to disturb my knight before winning the pawn back. Okay, rook a8, and then I have to do something like this and figure out how I avoid losing material here. So he could have played it more accurately at this stage, it seems. Took with the pawn. I'm just curious if, in the position, once he got his rook to c8 and I brought mine to c1, if there's anything here. We're back up to like a half-pawn advantage, but I couldn't figure out a good way. Yeah, g4 might have been worth some consideration. So the reason why I started thinking about pawn moves on the king side and why we actually played a series of pawn moves on the king side now is there's something of a standoff going on the queen side. Like, I'm defending my knight with both my rooks. He's attacking with both of his rooks. His knight doesn't have a lot of squares to go to other than that b2 square. And both pawns are safe for the moment. So it's not really obvious that either side wants to do too much on the queen side. I think for him, it's best that he just stays put for now. So, meanwhile, the king side structure is relatively undetermined yet. So it's kind of like a race to grab the most space as possible. We're both trying to set ourselves up for the coming endgame. So that's why the top move of the computer is e4, which shuts down his f5 plan. The computer I see also liked g4 for a time because it was discouraging f5 and h5, and I played h4. In retrospect, I wish I would have played g4 or e4, though. I think that's a little bit better because g4 especially would shut down his options with his pawns here. So that happens a lot when you seem to hit a dead end on one side of the board, and it's an endgame and the position's relatively static. You can often shift your focus to the other wing and start gaining space over there. g3, I just played that because we're getting low on time, and I just wanted to have h4 defended. I've actually set up the wave breaker structure now. Yeah, I don't think there's much here for white. He played the very annoying move knight b2 soon. With f4, I was attempting to play knight e5 and then trade rooks, and in the best case scenario, I would get my rook to c7 after that and like have mating threats or just threaten to win his f7 pawn. But knight b2 is a nice counterstroke, attacking my rook, and I tried to avoid going into the pure rook endgame, but it's not really possible. Yeah, and this is just dead even. Yeah. Here, I guess I could have played rook a2, but I was actually somewhat concerned he might make a break and try to win some of my kingside pawns, although with my b pawn being so dangerous, he probably wouldn't have done that. yeah, not much to talk about for the rest of this. This is just a draw. So, okay. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. And please feel free to leave me any feedback in the comments. Thanks, guys.